about. Let's dive right in with this. So I've been featured on MTV, on Amazon. I've been on multiple podcasts, multiple news channels around the world, including the BBC. I've been on multiple radio stations around the world. I've been an NLP coach, an NLP master practitioner, an NLP trainer to many celebrities. I was the NLP coach for a woman called Charlotte Crosby for an MTV show called The Charlotte Show. I was the NLP trainer and coach for a woman called Letitia Grace for a TV show called $1 Million Baby, where I used my NLP skills to help Letitia overcome her fear of public speaking. I am an NLP master practitioner and an NLP trainer. I've been featured on MTV, been featured on the BBC. My career has spanned far and wide. I used to be an actor as well before I dived into the world of coaching. I've worked with the likes of Tom Hardy, Morgan Freeman, Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Anne Hathaway, some of my favorite people in the world. I love them dearly. I've created, before the Coaching Masters, I created a very successful offline NLP training academy called the Aspiration Hub. Now, I was in the offline space before I discovered the online space. And you know what? It was Lewis that showed me the online space. And when we partnered up and we took our skill sets and we combined them, I was a trainer. He was a top level coach. He knew how to teach people how to get clients effortlessly and that steady stream of paying clients and a steady income. And I was training people left, right, and center in the mediums of NLP and coaching and all various different styles. And we joined forces. And I left my NLP training academy, the Aspiration Hub, behind. And we created a very successful coaching, a qualification and accreditation school that you guys know as the Coaching Masters. And I'm also a senior qualified and accredited coach myself, an international speaker. I've been invited to speak on stages around the world on various different topics, from NLP to coaching to mindset, everything you can think of within the NLP space, the mindset space, the coaching space. I've stood on a stage, I've spoken about it. And you know what? Some of you watching this live right now, you've probably seen me on stage and heard me on stage. And maybe we've even managed to have one of those classic hugs that I like to give everybody after I've spoken. I was the NLP trainer at the biggest Fortune 500 organization on planet Earth, Amazon, which I'm extremely proud of. And you know what? That collection of experience, that collection of skill sets, they all contribute in a huge way to creating the trainer that I am today, creating the coach that I am today. And I like to try to part with as much of that knowledge and skill set as I possibly can. And you know what? I'm going to do a little bit of that right now. So what is NLP? NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Now, let me just look at the time because I want to always make sure. Right, okay, awesome. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. Neuro-Linguistic Programming. I'm going to say that again. Neuro-Linguistic Programming. The N in NLP, the study of the mind and the nervous system. The neurology in NLP is how we think and how our body reacts. The neurology part of NLP is talking about the connection between our minds and our bodies and our nervous systems, okay? Now, there's one thing I can guarantee. It. There are going to be moments throughout this training where you just think, whoa, what the fuck is he talking about? Whoa, I'm not following, I'm not understanding it. And you know what? It's all good. It's all good. Because through that confusion comes growth. And through that confusion, you discover something so powerful that you will be able to use forever and ever and ever. So you know what? You can always watch this on the replay. You can always have a conversation with me about NLP and you will get it. You will understand it. And I promise that when you do, you will be a very, very powerful coach. So neurology is the N in NLP, neuro. L is language, linguistics. It's the study of language, both verbal language and body language, all the different types of languages, the things we're saying, the things we're not saying, the way that we use our words, the way that we use communication, how we use it and how it affects us. And the P stands for programming, which is the sequence of our actions on a daily basis, how we motivate ourselves to achieve goals, how we fall in love, how we fall out of love, how we hate, how we feel excited. We have programs programmed into our head, programs that have been with you since a very, very young age. And through NLP, we learn how to change those programs, which is very exciting. Think about the things that you do on a daily basis that you might not like. Think about your bad habits. Think about the things that you do that you wish you could change. They are programs. And through neuro-linguistic programming, we can reprogram that stuff. So it's very, very exciting. Part one, let's jump into it. Neuro. This is the nervous system and refers to our brain and our physiology, our body. Our physiology is the term that we use when we're talking about our body and our stature and our stance within the world of NLP, through which our experience is processed. Now, the key word there is experience. It's how we process information to create what we call a subjective experience, i.e., an experience that's completely unique to us. But how do we do that? It is how we represent the world via our five senses. That's how we do it. We absorb information through our five senses. We see it, we hear it, we feel it, we smell it, we taste it. Okay, I'm going to say that again. We see it, we hear it, we feel it, we smell it, we taste it. All of that information comes rushing in through our five senses. And what that does is it creates our subjective, unique, one-of-a-kind experience. And that is very interesting. And that's very, very key, because we need to understand the unique, subjective experience that not only we're having, to understand that we are a unique individual and not everybody on planet Earth is going to see things or hear things or feel things the way that we do. But we also need to understand that about our clients as well, because they are utterly, utterly unique. What is your state? Now, within the world of NLP, this is a word that gets used a lot. And our state essentially means our mood, right? It's what mood we're in. Now, what you'll learn about me is I'm a little bit of a rebel when it comes to NLP, and I fight against the terminology. There's a lot of terminology within the world of NLP that I think is unnecessary and it doesn't need to be there. NLP was created in the 1970s by two men called Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And you know what? I have a feeling, I have a suspicion that they thought to be taken seriously, they needed to throw around a whole load of bullshit terminology, big words to sound like they fucking know what they're talking about. I'm cutting through that crap. We don't need it. Now, state might not be one of those big, complicated words, but essentially what state we're in, it means what mood we're in, right? If we cut through the shit. We all find ourselves in different states throughout the day, right? Different moods. We might feel energized. We might feel excited. We might feel lazy. We might feel sad, jealous, nervous, overwhelmed, loving, focused. You know, there are hundreds, thousands of different states. Currently, I will describe my state to you. I'm in a state which is energized and focused, and actually probably what I would consider to be in flow as well. Because I know this material so well, like the back of my hand. I could deliver it with my eyes closed, or on stage in front of 10,000 people, or of course on this Zoom call, which I was 10 minutes late for. That's my state. Your state might be excited, it might be lethargic. Hopefully you're in a state of learning, because that is actually very, very, very key. So our state is another word for our mood, and it describes a particular way we feel. States break down into two different categories: helpful or unhelpful. In NLP and coaching, we are not concerned about good or bad, right or wrong, true or false. I'm going to say that again. We don't care whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, true or false. Doesn't make a difference for us. We want to know, is that state helpful or is it unhelpful? If you're in a state of anger and you say to me, yeah, but I've got a fucking right to be angry. I deserve to be angry because what that person did over there is completely wrong. I'm not arguing with that. But what I am going to ask you as an NLP trainer is I'm going to ask you, is it helpful? Is it useful? Because you might turn around and say, you know what, I am angry and I feel like I've got a right to be angry because that person's wrong. But you also could say, but it's not useful for me to be angry because I'm not thinking clearly and I'm not communicating effectively and I'm not being able to get over my point in the way that I want. So as an NLP trainer and a master practitioner, I only care about whether or not your state is useful or not useful. Is it helpful or unhelpful? If it's unhelpful, if it's unuseful, I'm going to help you change it. Changing your state. So how do we do that though? That's the big question, isn't it? How do we do that? James said, it's all burning. The dinner's burning. No way, mate. Well, you better tend to that. Be safe. Be safe. We can use NLP to change our state, right? It's one of the most just exciting things about NLP. There is no unresourceful people, just unresourceful states. Think about the power of that for a moment. There is no unresourceful people, just unresourceful states. How well you perform depends on which state you find yourself in. Whatever task you have to perform, whatever you want as an outcome, ask yourself, what state do I want to be in to make this easy? What state do I need to be in to make this fun? What state do I need to be in to get the best possible outcome? Next time you find yourself in a situation and there is a certain outcome that you want, that you desire, first, step number one, and we're going to go onto some techniques in a minute, but step number one, make the decision what outcome you want. Okay, let's use an example. Let's say, for instance, you're arguing with your partner and your current state is angry and jealous and sad, right? It's a mixture there, and they're all negative and they're all unhelpful. And the outcome that you want is you want to be able to have a nice, calm conversation with your partner, and you want them to be able to see things from your point of view. Angry, jealous, and sad are probably not very helpful states. They're not going to help you get that outcome. So first ask yourself, what is the outcome that I want? Okay, the outcome that I want is I want my partner to see things from my point of view. Then ask yourself, what state do I need to be in or want to be in to get that result? Maybe it's a state of calm. Maybe it's a state of understanding. Maybe it's a state of patience. And then you've made the decision what state you need to be in, right? So as we go through this training, we're going to learn a bit more about how you can get into those states. Habits, patterns, state. Okay, so let's move on with this and figure out how we do that. Usually habits are useful. Don't forget that. Usually, for the most part, habits are useful. Autopilot means our brains have become so efficient at doing something that we can tune out our conscious mind. We get dressed, we drive, we walk, we clean our teeth in ways that don't need any conscious attention. We just do them. But patterns can also be our downfall. Now, those ones that I just listed, they're very useful patterns. They're very useful habits because you don't need to consciously think about how to brush your teeth every time you do it. You don't need to consciously think about how to walk every day. You don't need to consciously think about how to drive your car because you've been doing it for so many years. And if you did have to consciously think about those things, it would be so time consuming, you'd never get anything done. So habits are good because they're a time saver. However, habits can be our downfall. We can eat mindlessly and therefore overeat. We can tune out important people and not hear important messages. We can exercise without paying attention and damage our bodies. We can have bad habits that reoccur on a daily basis. We can bite our nails. We can have a habit and a pattern of snapping at people if they say a certain thing or make us feel a certain way. So habits are neither good nor bad. Once again, in the world of NLP, it's either useful or it's not useful. Interrupting the pattern is how we change the state. Okay, now we're going to uncover this throughout tonight's training. Interrupting the pattern. When you find yourself in an unuseful state, your neurology is running a particular pattern, or what we call a program, hence neuro-linguistic programming. Your neurology, your brain, your nervous system, everything about your being on a neurological level is running a program, running a pattern. And you know what? Have you ever done something time and time again, and every time you do it, you stop and you beat yourself up and you think, God, why do I do that? Why do I do that? Why do I say that? Why do I react like that? Why do I keep going there? Why do I keep speaking to that person? Why do I keep lighting up a cigarette? Why do I keep biting my nails? Why do I keep doing things that aren't good for me? If you can relate to that in any way whatsoever, and I'm the first one to say yes, because of course I'm a human being, not a finished article. If you can relate to that in any way whatsoever, I want you to say yes in the comments. If you can relate to that, the idea of running a pattern again and again and again, and then stopping and thinking, why do I do that? Why do I react that way? Why do I snap? Why do I bite my nails? Why do I do this? Why do I do that? So what we got to do is we got to break that pattern in order to break the state. But how? That's the big question. How do we break the pattern? We have to interrupt whatever is currently taking control of our three main senses. That's what we need to do. We need to interrupt what is currently taking control of our three main senses. So how do we do it? How do we break the pattern? How do we stop doing that bullshit that we don't want to do again and again and again? We have to interrupt our three main senses and what is currently taking control of our three main senses. And those three main senses are what we see, what we hear, and what we feel. Okay, we've obviously got taste and smell, but they're not as key. They're not core senses. We got to take control over what we see, what we hear, and what we feel. Why? Why do we have to take control of that? Because these senses are fully responsible for how you feel. We think that outside forces affect how we feel. And of course they do initially. However, how we continue to feel is determined by our senses because they determine our state. Now, there's one thing, if you've been in the coaching masters for a long time, you without a doubt are going to have heard me say this quite a few times. Our thoughts create our feelings create our actions, and our actions create our results. So if we want better results, i.e. we want a better life, we have to go all the way back to that beginning of that pattern, and we need to change our thoughts, right? This is what we're doing here. Something has happened initially. That information has flown in through your five senses. You've processed it all at the speed of light in the blink of an eye, unconsciously, and it's made you feel a certain way, right? For the most part, we can't do anything about that. However, what you continue to think about, and more specifically, what you continue to think about in terms of what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, that determines our state. That determines our mood, right? That determines our feelings. And don't forget, feelings create actions, actions create results. So when we're not feeling good, that's when we have actions that don't serve us. When on earth has anyone ever said, oh God, I'm so happy I made that decision that day. I was fucking furious. No one's ever said, oh, that day where I was really furious and my whole mind was clouded and I couldn't think straight. I'm so happy I made that decision in that state. Doesn't happen, right? Because our thoughts create our feelings create our actions create our results. If we want better results, we need better actions. If we want better actions, we've got to have better feelings. If we want better feelings, we've got to have better thoughts. And we've got to think about these three things because they determine our state. I'm sure you can tell I'm very passionate about this. No matter how many years I've delivered this content, I will forever deliver it with the same level of passion. But the passion does make me get a little bit tongue-tied every so often. So here are some steps to changing your state using your neurology. Okay, guys? Step one, recognize what state you are currently in. This is the unhelpful state. Stop, think, feel, recognize, be open, be honest. What is the state I'm currently in that is not serving me? That's the first thing you've got to do. You've got to ask that question. Step two, ask yourself, what am I looking at which is putting me in this state? It may be physically what you're looking at, but I'm talking more about what you're seeing in your mind, in your thoughts. Step number three, what am I listening to that is putting me in this state? Now, again, we are talking internally and externally. James says, are you watching me through the phone? I know what's going on, mate. I'm everywhere. I'm talking externally and internally. What are you listening to? What are the sounds that are around you or the sounds you're thinking of inside your head? Also, little tip here, what we're listening to, I'm also talking about that internal dialogue, i.e. what are you saying to yourself? But we're going to touch on that in a moment. What am I doing that is putting me in this state? The reason that those three steps are so key is because in this world, now this might be a little bit controversial, but it's something I firmly believe in, and so I need to share it. In this world of over-medicalization, is that word? No, not medicalization. What's the word? Basically, we're getting fucking pushed too many drugs, right? Too much medicine, too many drugs. We're being told that we've got these labels. right? You are this, in which case you need these pills. You are this, in which case you need this injection. You are this. Now, if you're feeling depressed, the chances are what you're looking at, what you're listening to, and what you're doing are contributing towards the state that you find yourself in. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling jealous, if you're feeling fucking furious, if you're feeling like you can't pay attention, don't forget, what are these things? States, moods, states. These are the things that we find ourselves in. These are the realms that we find ourselves in. But what we need to do is we need to take responsibility in regards to what we're looking at, what we're listening to, and what we're doing. And how are those three things contributing towards the state we find ourselves in? Then step number 5 is the golden question. What state would be much more helpful right now or useful? Or what state would you like to be in right now? You know, let's just go straight in with a bit of desire. What state do you want to be in? We've been given these labels, whereas a matter of fact is we're finding ourselves in states. And how are states created? They're created by what we're looking at, what we're listening to, and what we're doing. And if we're looking at, listening to, and doing those things on a daily basis on repeat, they become a program. And therefore, we then feel like that is who we are. That's us. Oh, well, I'm just an anxious person. Oh, no, well, I am depressed. You know, no, I am just sad. I'm down. I'm unenergetic. I am not smart. I'm not a go-getter. I'm not outgoing. I'm not brave. Titles, 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 states, states, states. People feel like titles can't change because they think it's who they are. States most certainly can change. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to know that you can be anything you want, and you can feel anything you want to feel, and you can be in the state that you desire. It's not easy, but it's doable. And this is the process. So, golden question, step number 5. What state would be much more helpful right now, much more useful? What state do I want to be in right now? Then you ask yourself, step number 6, what do I need to see to put me in this helpful state? Don't expect to have the answer straight away. Don't expect to simply know the answer. Don't expect to be able to just click your fingers and know it and feel it and have all the answers. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the journey. Feel it out. Take your time with it. But really think, what do I need to see to put me in this helpful state? What do I need to hear to put me in this helpful state? What do I need to do to put me in this helpful state? And then the big step, number 9, take action and apply those things in a dramatic way instantly. That's the key of changing a pattern. You don't change a pattern slowly. You change it straight away, drastically, instantly. It changes slowly over time. But if you want to break yourself out of an unhelpful state, you've got to do it straight away. You've got to do it instantly, straight away. You need to ask yourself, okay, this is the state I'm currently in because I'm looking at this, I'm listening to this, and I'm doing this. This is the state I want to be in. And in order to feel that, I need to look at this, I need to listen to this, and I need to do that. Do it straight away. Don't fuck about. Change the patterns. Change the pattern, disrupt the pattern, leave the house. Change the music you're listening to. Look up, look down, get up off the sofa, go for a run, dance around the room, scream and shout, stop, breathe, phone your mum, talk to the neighbor. Do anything to break the pattern that you're currently in if you are in a state that you don't want to be in. Don't allow yourself to live inside the state. Raise your standards by breaking the pattern. I'm going to say that again. Raise your standards by breaking the pattern, and then seek what it is you need to look at, what it is you need to listen to, and what it is you need to do to put you in the more useful state. You guys have the power to do this on a daily basis. Never accept the state that you're in if it's a state you don't want to be in. Firstly, don't beat yourself up by finding yourself in a state you don't want to be in because you're a human being. And all of us, including me, on a daily basis finds ourselves in states we don't want to be in. The difference is making the decision that you're not going to stay there. That's the difference. And if you have made that decision that you're going to raise your standards and not stay in that unhelpful state, and instead you're going to seek out a helpful state, those are the 9 steps that you must follow instantly to do that. And I promise you do that enough times, what happens? Well, let me ask the question. What happened after you drove your car 100 times, 200 times, 300 times? You can now drive from A to B without even thinking about it. That's the exact same with this. When I find myself in an unhelpful state that I don't like, which I do on a daily basis, you better believe I get rid of that shit ASAP. ASAP. And how do I get rid of it? These 9 steps. And now it's become second nature. Still have to do it though. Just because you learn how to drive a car effortlessly doesn't mean all of a sudden that you can get places without the car. Still got to drive. It's the same with this. I've still got to follow the steps, but I just do it now. It becomes a pattern. Don't underestimate your neurology. Please, ladies and gentlemen, don't underestimate your neurology. Don't underestimate the power of simply breaking your patterns. When you make the effort to change what your pattern of seeing, hearing and doing is, then you are creating shifts in your neurology that change your state. Never look at this and think, oh yeah, but all I'm doing is getting up and jumping around. All I'm doing is putting some music on and dancing about. All I'm doing is picking up the phone and calling a loved one. All I'm doing is going for a run. Yeah, but all I'm doing is changing what I'm looking at and what I'm listening to and what I'm doing. Never underestimate the power of that. Because those 3 things, what you're looking at, what you're hearing and what you're doing, they have a direct effect on your neurology that is filtering down into your whole being and creating the person that you are today. So if you find yourself in a state of sadness, depression, anxiety, fear, anger, jealousy, frustration, break that shit. If you don't want to be in that state, which I can imagine you probably don't, because it's a negative state. Nobody wants to feel those things. Now, does that mean that we don't have the right to feel them? No, you do have the right to feel them. Do you want to feel them? And is it helpful for you? If the answer is no, break the pattern. Think about what a more helpful state would be and elicit that state through your senses. And you are well on your way to controlling your life. Ladies and gentlemen, that is only the N in NLP. And we're about to dive into the L and the P. But I can promise you right now that if that one technique was the only thing you ever took from me, with all of my years within the world of NLP, with all of my experience as a trainer at Amazon, at MTV, from standing up on every stage around the world, talking about this stuff, if that was the only thing you ever took from me, you would have just taken a huge leap in the direction of taking control of your life. So please do it, because you guys are fucking superheroes and you deserve it. You know now a little bit about the neuro. Now, what I want you to start thinking is, holy shit, if this is what we're getting completely for free, just as an introduction, I'm just going to come flat out and say it. Just as an introduction, could you imagine the content that we go in through our 12-week NLP practitioner program? I'm just throwing it out there. I think it deserves to be thrown out there. Anyway, you now know a little bit about the neuro, and I'm going to tell you about the linguistic, the language, all verbal and non-verbal communication through which we explain what we are feeling and thinking. Now, let me explain that very briefly. You watching this right now, you listening to this, you are incredibly special, unique, powerful, and complicated in the most wonderful way possible. Your internal world is so complex that we could never, ever possibly begin to even attempt to explain what is going on inside our heads through simple words. Yet, That's exactly what we do on a daily basis. We communicate with each other in the hopes that we are going to be able to understand each other. And you know what? The more I train NLP, the more you learn about NLP, the more you realize that it's quite amazing that any of us ever really see eye to eye, because everybody is so unbelievably unique that you would actually think surely nobody would ever truly understand each other. And the reason for that is because the human language, right, the spoken word, no matter what language that is, whether it's English, Chinese, whether it's a Lithuanian, whether it's Scandinavian, whether it's Finnish, it doesn't matter. Whatever language around the world is limited. It's limited because we cannot ever really explain what is going on inside here and inside here. Yet we have to try, because it's the only way we have to describe each other's experience to each other. So how you communicate with others and yourself is a huge part of NLP. What do you say to yourself, and what experiences does that create? This is what we want to focus on now, because with the linguistics, it's obviously a lot of it is about how we communicate with each other, but a huge part of linguistics in NLP is about how we communicate with ourselves, and therefore create our state, and therefore create our actions, and therefore get the results we get in life. So if we can control this, and we can control our voice internally and externally, again, we can control huge elements of our life. Now, this session, we're focusing on the way in which we speak to ourselves and how this can change our behavior. Changing behavior through language. How are we able to change our behavior by changing our language? Through this simple formula. Our language creates our experience. Okay. Now I'm going to touch on this very, very briefly, because this is very important. Many people believe, and they don't act, most people don't actively think of this, but this is probably the general belief that a lot of people would have, is that language, our spoken word, can only ever really describe our experience. And that's not true. Our language, the words that we use to talk to each other, it actually creates our experience. And those of you may have heard me tell this story before. But what I want you to do as you're listening to this, I want you to imagine. So stop for a moment, not you, James, because you've got a flaming frying pan and a few onions that are making you cry. Onions always make me cry. What is that all about? That's strange, isn't it? I want you to stop and listen to my voice. And as you listen to my voice, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that it's a very, very hot summer's day. And here in the middle of London, in the United Kingdom, it is a hot summer's day. And I want you to imagine that it's swelteringly hot, to the point where you feel a hot flush. And you walk up to your fridge or refrigerator, and you open it up, and that cool breeze just exits the door and hits you in the face and instantly cools you down. And there's a lemon in the fridge, and it's got that waxy skin, and it's ice cold. And you take the lemon out of the fridge, and you cut into the lemon, and you cut a slice, and you suck the lemon, and you feel that salivation in your jaw as you bite into the lemon, and the sourness creates that salivation. Now, if you really take your time with that story, you can genuinely make people salivate. And that may have happened for some of you listening to that story. You can genuinely make people feel like there's a bit of a hot flush when you describe the hot day. You can genuinely feel even just a little bit that cool air that exits the fridge and hits you in the face. What is that about? How do we explain that? Because before, like most people would think, oh, but language just describes your experience. No. It creates your experience. The sheer fact that I can make people salivate and have that sour feeling in the back of their jaw just because I'm describing this story of them biting into a lemon. I'm giving people a physical reaction, and all I'm doing is speaking words. These little vibrations that are leaving my mouth and entering your eardrums, that's all I'm doing. It's the spoken word. But the spoken word creates your experience. So what do we know now? We know that language and the spoken word creates our experience, and our experiences create our beliefs. Now, there's something that each and every one of you need to know about beliefs. And this also can be controversial. Beliefs are very strongly held opinions, no matter how strong your beliefs are. And beliefs are fucking strong. People die for their beliefs. Beliefs can hold people down or raise people up. Our beliefs can dictate our life in many respects. However, beliefs are very strongly held opinions. And where do we get these strongly held opinions? Where do we get these beliefs? Through our past experiences. Through our experiences. We see things, we hear things, we experience things, and then we make decisions and we say, that means this. That means all of those people are bad. That means that person loves me. That means that person hates me. That means I'm not good enough. That means I am good enough. That means I'm not strong enough. That means I am smart enough. We create these beliefs about ourselves and about other people and about places and things and experiences based on what we've experienced in the past. And what do our beliefs do? They affect our behavior. They affect what we do, how we act, how we react, how we speak, how we move, where we go, where we don't go. It affects our opportunities. It affects the things that happen in our life and around us and to us. We know this to be true, right? Our behavior is affected by our beliefs. And now we know that our beliefs are affected by our experiences, and our experiences are created by our language. So for those of you that thought, oh, it's only words, isn't it? It's only words. They're not only words. Words are powerful. This lemon experience, being able to make people physically salivate through describing the lemon and biting into the sour lemon, that is the exact reason why the term sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me is the biggest load of bullshit anyone's ever said. Because words can physically hurt. Words can hurt. Words can have that effect on us. And we've all felt it. I don't believe deep down anyone's ever believed that bullshit saying, because we've all felt it. Words have cut each and every one of us at some point in our life. Because language creates experience. Experience creates belief, and belief creates behaviors. So there, of course, is the lemon example, which we have just jumped in. So if language affects what we believe, how can we use this to help change our behavior? That's the big question. Now, there is one very simple fact that sometimes we forget, and it's a very important fact, and it's something that we should never deny. We talk to ourselves, right? We talk to ourselves. It doesn't make you crazy. It makes you human. That is a very important fact. So let's dive in with tip number 1, how we can change our language to change our experience, and therefore change our beliefs, and therefore change our behavior. If we can change our language to stop and break down and destroy limiting beliefs we have about ourselves, which for the new amongst us, a limiting belief is a belief that we have about ourselves or about a place or a person or a thing that holds us back and stops us from fulfilling our full potential. So we ask ourselves, we have these limiting beliefs. Lucy Ward says the scars from words last so much longer, I think. Absolutely, Lucy, I think that as well, because it creates your experience. Now, we're thinking, okay, that's really interesting, but how do I change this? By language. How can I change it? We want to modify language to rewire our belief system. And there is one simple but effective way of doing it. By making any negative statement about yourself from present tense to past tense. Never, ever underestimate the power of this. Never. This is a game changer. ladies and gentlemen. If you have a limiting belief about yourself, it may be, I'm not very good at building relationships. I'm not very smart. I'm not good looking. I'm not good enough, which is just this huge overarching one that a lot of people feel on some level. If you change the language that you use to describe that limiting belief and you take it from present tense to past tense, what it does is it tricks your brain into thinking it's no longer a problem. Your brain at the moment is convinced that your limiting belief is true, and that's a fucking problem. You may have a limiting belief about yourself. Now, what is a limiting belief that you have about yourself? And I'm going to tell you one of mine. I have a limiting belief. I believe that I am small and easy to disrespect. I believe that to be true. It's a limiting belief that I battle with, and it's a limiting belief that I work hard towards changing all the time through my own NLP skills. I have a belief that I'm small, and when I say that, I believe I'm physically small, and I believe that I can be easily disrespected, which really gets under my skin. That's a limiting belief of mine. Now, what I do to tackle that when I know that I'm about to fucking stand up on stage and I need to feel big and I need to feel strong and I need to feel powerful, I make the conscious effort and the conscious decision to say, I used to feel small and I used to feel disrespected. And the moment I say, I used to feel small, I used to feel disrespected, it gives me fucking goosebumps now when I say it. Because what's my brain thinking when I say that? My brain is now thinking, yeah, fucking that's in the past, mate. Now how do you feel? You feel big, you feel strong, you feel powerful. Just because I've said I used to feel small, I used to feel disrespected. Helen, I'm not good enough. Helen, I want you out loud in your own space right now, if you can, to say, I used to feel like I wasn't good enough. That's how I used to feel. And I want each and every one of you right now, in this moment, to make the decision that you are going to trick your neurology, trick your brain by never, ever speaking about yourself in the present tense like that with those limiting beliefs ever again. Never refer to those limiting beliefs in the present tense. If you ever find yourself saying it to yourself, flip it to the past tense and say that is how you used to feel. In your past, that's how you felt. Your brain, I can promise you right now, will go, okay, that means we no longer feel that way. We must feel something completely fucking different. And it will fill the gap with something more empowering. So, no matter what tense we speak about ourselves in, that's what our brains believe to be true. Present tense, it thinks it's true. Past tense, thinks it's true. Example, present tense, I am so lazy. Past tense, I used to be so lazy. If you said to yourself, I used to be so lazy, what does that imply to your brain? I'm full of fucking energy now. I used to be really lazy. Speaking about ourselves in the past tense opens up new opportunities for the future. It stops us from remaining stuck where we are because it tricks our brains into thinking we no longer have this problem. Tip number 2, creating identity statements with language. This is one of the most powerful things that I can share with you, ladies and gentlemen. Also, the language we use determines our identity. Now, what do I mean by identity? Our identity is who we believe who we are. And that is very strong. It's very strong, and it can either lift us up or break us down. If you want to give up smoking, now we're going to use this as just one example, but ladies and gentlemen, I want you to use this exact tip for all of the limiting beliefs that are flooding in right now in the comments. And well done, everybody, for being that honest and being that raw. Use this tip with your own limiting belief, your own identity statement. You know, and there are a few here. An identity statement would be something such as, James, I procrastinate. I am a procrastinator. That's an identity statement. That's a negative identity statement. Kelly Cox, I'm not worthy. I'm not worth X amount of pounds. That's an identity statement. Paul McGowan, I am scared of public speaking, or I'm not a good public speaker. That would be an identity statement, right? So you get what I mean, okay? So we're going to use the example of smoking, right? It's just something that you feel like that's, well, I am a smoker, right? That's what that would be. I am a smoker. If you want to give up smoking, these are the common statements people make. I'm trying not to smoke. I'm not smoking at the moment. I haven't smoked in 8 months. Think about your example, guys. I'm trying to be a better public speaker. I'm trying to charge what I'm worth. I'm thinking that maybe I might charge what I'm worth. David Starr, being understood. I want to be understood. I'm trying to be understood. I wish I was understood. Okay, these are the sorts of things that we say to ourselves. However, you want to create a strong identity statement that either stops the thing that you don't want to be or embraces the thing that you do. I'm going to say that again. Create an identity statement that either stops the thing that you don't want to be or it embraces and creates the thing that you do. But if you're trying not to smoke, what is the most powerful statement you could make? What is the most effective way that you can use your language to affect your beliefs and therefore affect your behavior? I don't smoke. That is way more powerful than I'm trying not to smoke. I'm trying to give up. I shouldn't really. I'm not allowed. They're weak statements. They're not going to work. I am a strong public speaker. And you know what? At first, you're not going to believe yourself. And that's okay. I am worth X amount of pounds and I will charge that. What were some of these other ones that dropped in? I think it was Stephanie, I'm not knowledgeable enough. I am knowledgeable enough. And again, don't forget, at first, your brain is going to feel like you're lying. But again, what do we need to do? Create a program through repetition. When people live by affirmations, this is the reason people live by affirmations. The repetition of language again and again and again and again creates an experience, and that experience creates our belief, and our belief creates our behavior. In other words, your neurology starts to believe that to be true because it's heard it so many times, it no longer argues. There's a thing that we dive into in the NLP course called neuroplasticity, which is where the shape of your brain changes when you do something enough times. You repeat this stuff to yourself enough times, neuroplasticity changes the shape of your brain to the point where you believe it to be true. And what do we know? If you believe it to be true, that's going to affect your behavior. If I say to myself, I am big, I am powerful, I am respected, I am big, I am powerful, I am respected, again and again and again, and I've done it multiple times. I know I can walk out on that stage and I no longer feel small and no longer feel disrespected simply because I've tricked my brain. So never forget, your language creates your experience. Your experience creates your belief, and your beliefs create your behavior. Use your language very wisely because it's a lot more powerful than you think. Before we jump into programming, one very last tip. Jade says, I make a routine when I wake up and I play affirmations for 15 minutes. Brilliant. Love that. Jill says, that was me before NLP. Love. You're awesome, Jill. You're amazing. So glad to have you here. You're going to hear from Jill very soon as well, ladies and gentlemen, she's an incredible woman. So another quick tip. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself, right? We negatively speak to ourselves too much. And the problem with that is we start to believe ourselves. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. Your language matters. Then there is the P in NLP, the programming. Programming refers to a series of steps we take to create an experience, also known as habits. We all know what those are. A common saying within the world of NLP and amongst trainers is change your habit, change your life. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to change people's habits because we need to understand the power of habits. Habits shape life far more than you probably realize. More than 40% of the actions you perform each day are not conscious decisions. They are unconscious habits. Not only are habits important, they grow stronger and stronger over time and become more and more automatic. So make sure you have the right habits. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. Okay. But there are ways that we can change our habits, and we're going to dive into them now. Neurological cravings, right? We need to touch on this. Habits are so powerful because they create what we call in NLP neurological cravings. A certain behavior is rewarded by the release of pleasure chemicals in the brain each time we release these pleasure chemicals when we do this habit. Even bad habits, especially bad habits. Otherwise, we wouldn't do them. So there is this one thing that we need to understand, and it's called the habit loop. Habits work through what is known as the habit loop. Okay. Now the habit loop is cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward. Another word for a cue is a trigger. Trigger, routine, reward. Trigger, routine, reward. Now, what are some of these triggers? They can be locations. They can be times of day. They can be certain people. They can be an emotional state that we find ourselves in. These are triggers. Things we see, things we hear, places we go, people that we're around, songs we listen to, times of day, the moment the alarm goes off in the morning, the time you go to bed at night. We are constantly surrounded by triggers everywhere. And then what do those triggers trigger? They trigger a routine. We've got Elle down here saying, if you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself, was the game changer in my life and my mindset. You're also going to hear from Elle very soon, a wonderful woman and a great NLP practitioner, soon to be master practitioner. Routine, right? That is what's created off of the back of the triggers. Watching TV, smoking a cigarette, eating the chocolate, biting your nails. This is the routine that happens again and again and again and again because of the trigger. And why does it keep happening? Because of the reward we get for doing the bullshit habit, the pleasure chemical. The pleasure chemicals released in the brain because of the routine, the serotonin, the dopamine, because of the reward, the habit loop is reinforced and it gets stronger. The more dopamine we get, the more serotonin we get, the more of those pleasure chemicals we get. It strengthens the loop. It gives the loop power. It makes the loop all-encompassing and powerful. And therefore, when we're faced with that trigger once again, we do the routine that we don't like because once again, we get the reward. For years, I was a horrific nail biter. My triggers was watching television and, well, that was the trigger. Every time I watched television, I used to do this with my nails and that started off the process. My routine after the trigger was picking at my nails and then biting them. And you know what? Deep down inside my brain, according to these chemicals, I fucking loved it. But what didn't I love? I didn't like the habit. I didn't like the routine. So I needed to be able to break the habit loop. Now, before we do that, there's good versus bad habits. Never forget this. Unconscious habits free up energy that can be used to focus on other tasks. Habits can be good and bad. These habits can work to our advantage. Let's never, ever forget that habits can work to our advantage. Just keep my eye on the time there, ladies and gentlemen. However, if a bad habit is created, you need to change it. Okay? If a bad habit is created, you need to change it. Elle says, lifelong nail biter here. You know what, Elle? You've got to find that trigger and you've got to follow this process that we're going to dive into now. Unless you intentionally fight a bad habit and replace it with a new routine, the pattern will unfold automatically over and over and over again every time the habit is activated by the trigger. So how do we change a bad habit using programming? Step number 1, recognize what trigger you have that creates the bad habit. What's the cue? My one with biting my nails to a fellow. Okay, here's a good example. I was nearly about to refer to Elle and say a fellow nail biter. What would that have been based on what we've learned tonight? An identity statement. Do you know what my new identity statement is? I don't bite my nails. I am not a nail biter. I don't bite my nails. Now, I haven't bitten my nails in nearly a year. Elle, my good friend Elle, wonderful woman who you get back to hear from, still a nail biter. And you know what, Elle, you won't mind me pointing this out because we're human, we do this. There's an identity statement in Elle's comment. Lifelong nail biter here. Identity statement. Me. That's who I am. Right? And I understand that connection because we're human, and I do it still to this day with various things that I don't like about myself that I want to change. But it's interesting, isn't it, how we use language to identify ourselves. You'll hear from Elle in a minute. She's about to jump on this live because she is fucking awesome. You'll love her. So step number 1, recognize what trigger you have that creates the bad habit. Mine was watching television. Step number 2, recognize what reward the bad habit gives you. Let's not deny the fact that we get a reward, right? Let's embrace it and think, actually, it makes me feel good. My reward is I just love that feeling of just like, oh, it's awful when I think about it now, but I like the feeling of like ripping away my nail. Decide what positive habit you would like to replace the bad one, okay? The key to changing a bad habit is all about the routine. It's all about the routine. We need to make a conscious effort to change the routine every time we experience the cue. Eventually, this will give us a brand new reward that is much more satisfying. At first, it will take a conscious effort to do this. However, over time, you will eventually form a new habit that is much more helpful. Do you know what I replaced the routine with? Every single time I made the effort. This was back in the days as well when I didn't have a lot of money. I spent a lot of money on a manicure kit, right? And I spent an uncomfortable amount of money on it that I knew and do you know why I did that? Breaking the pattern, right? Interrupting the pattern, like we spoke about in step number 1 in our neurology. I knew I was more likely to do something about it if I spent an uncomfortable amount of money on this manicure kit. And every time I sat down in front of the TV, I had this manicure kit next to my television on the side. And every time I sat down and the cue happened and I was sitting in front of the TV and I started picking at my nails, I grabbed the manicure kit and I actually gave myself a manicure. And that changed the routine. And you know what? I got a fucking great reward from that. I felt like I'd accomplished something and I got those pleasure chemicals. And to this day, I've got long nails. Like honestly, you should have seen my nails before. I didn't have any. I just didn't have any. So just to summarize that technique of programming, almost half the actions you perform each day are habits. Okay. Never underestimate that. Habits are powerful because of neurological cravings. We need that reward. Habits work through the habit loop, the cue, the routine, the reward, the cue, the routine, the reward. And when a habit emerges, the conscious mind stops participating in the decision making. When we get a habit, it's a habit. We don't consciously think about it. It just happens so many times that it happens unconsciously. But then eventually you stop and you look at what you're doing and you think, fuck me, why am I doing this? I don't want to be biting my nails. I don't want to be smoking that cigarette. I don't want to be snapping at that family member. I need to break this habit. So when changing a habit, use the same cue because the cue's not going anywhere, but change the routine because the habit itself has been built upon a certain routine and the routine is the thing you have control over. Replace it, change the routine and allow it to provide the same reward.